The year is 1977. A new cable channel debuted. It was called Cube. To be precise, Cube was a cable network based in Columbus, Ohio. It had a local channel known as C3. C3 only ever aired one show, a children's variety program called Pinwheel. Pinwheel was developed by former employees of CTW, best known for creating Sesame Street. More specifically, Dr. Vivian Horner, who also founded C3. Before creating Pinwheel, Vivian Horner was an educator and researcher for the PBS series The Electric Company. C3 broadcast Pinwheel on loop from December 1st, 1977 until March 31st, 1979. On April Fool's Day of 1979, everything changed. Time Warner Cable purchased C3 and changed its name to the time-honored Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon's very first logo looked like this. Pinwheel was Nick's launching program. In addition to Pinwheel, more shows were added, including Video Comics, Nickel Flicks, By the Way, and Hocus Focus. Nickelodeon actually gets its name from the Nickelodeon. The Nickelodeon was the very first type of cinema that was mainly a thing in the 1900s and 1910s. The name itself comes from nickel, the 5-cent coin, as well as Odeon, as in Odeon Theatre de l'Europe, a theater in France. In 1980, Nick changed its logo from a boring-looking word into a crystal ball with the letters of Nickelodeon being a rainbow. While Nickelodeon would initially air for 13 hours a day, the Alpha Repertory Television Service, or ARTS, would broadcast at night. In 1982, You Can't Do That on Television was added to the schedule. Basically, it was the 80s version of all that. In 1984, ARTS stopped existing, and it was replaced with Nick at Night, which broadcast old-timey shows from before the 1960s. While ARTS itself became the non-fiction drama channel A&E, which is on a completely different channel now. On October 1st, 1984, Nickelodeon retired its crystal ball logo, and they replaced it with the iconic orange splat that most know Nick for. Also in 1984, Geraldine Laybourne was made vice president of Nickelodeon. According to an interview with Vivian Horner, Laybourne was who made Nick such a success. We now enter 1985. Nick at Night officially starts existing, and Turkey Television is added to the lineup. In 1986, Nickelodeon premiered a new show that is very important to it. Double Dare, a hit new game show. The reason Double Dare is so important is because it originated the famous Nickelodeon slime. It would pour down on the show's contestants. Nickelodeon would proceed to slime various people and stars even today. Fun fact, I actually got slimed once. Actually, it was with Nickelodeon slime ketchup. Also, in '86, Nickelodeon's parent company, Viacom, bought MTV. Viacom also owned CBS, which is considered to be one of the big three networks, along with ABC and NBC. Each of the big three were owned by different companies, thus connecting Nickelodeon to the big boys. In 1987, Nick created the Big Ballot, a big event where kids got to vote for certain things. In 1988, two major Nick-related things debuted. One of them was Nick Jr. Nick Jr. would air shows aimed at preschool children on weekdays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. However, preschool programming aired on weekday mornings since the beginning, but the block didn't have a unique name until now. And the other was the fact that the Big Ballot changed its name to the Kids' Choice Awards after only 1 year. The Kids' Choice Awards is an annual show where kids could vote for various things in various categories. The winner of each category would receive an orange blimp with Nickelodeon's logo on it. In 1989, construction for Nickelodeon Studios Florida began. This building is also very bright and colorful. Isn't it pretty? This is also when the Nick Jr. block got its first actual show, Eureka's Castle. Eureka's Castle was a variety puppet show that aired between 1989 and 1991. Its head writer was actually Goosebumps author R.L. Stine. Welcome to the 90s! The 90s was probably Nick's prime time. Nick starts publishing magazines, but for now they're exclusive to Pizza Hut. Nickelodeon Studios officially opens in Orlando, Florida. This is also where most of Nick's live-action shows were filmed. And all their game shows, for that matter. Speaking of live-action shows, we got a bunch of them around this time. Welcome Freshmen, Clarissa Explains It All, and Salute Your Shorts. On August 11th, 1991, 3 new shows premiered on Nick. And they were a big first. Doug, Rugrats, and The Ren and Stimpy Show were Nick's first 3 Nicktoons. To summarize, Nicktoons are animated cartoon series that would air on Nickelodeon. These 3 were the only ones for a while, but many more would arrive later. In 1992, Nick released a block that only aired on Saturday nights, Snick. Snick would run for 2 hours, and broadcast shows such as these, but also 2 new shows exclusive to the block. On April 30th, 1992, Nickelodeon buried a time capsule. It's filled mostly with things that scream 90s. It will be opened in 2042, 50 years after being buried. See? However, Nick was also beginning to face competition from the Disney Channel and the newly launched Cartoon Network. So, they began advertising themselves as the first kids network. And they're not technically wrong. At this point, Nickelodeon was doing amazingly well. Nick now had 4 Nicktoons, with Rocko's Modern Life being added to the lineup. They also had new live-action hits, too. The young preschoolers can tune in on weekday mornings. You could vote for your favorite things every year. And you could tune into Saturday nights for the Ultimate Nick Experience. And now Nick Magazine was being sold all over the place instead of just your local Pizza Hut. Nick was a juggernaut too big to be taken down. In 1993, Nickelodeon VHS tapes started being produced. They were distributed by none other than Sony Wonder. On January 2nd, 1994, Doug became the first Nicktoon to get cancelled. But 2 years later, Disney stole it and made new episodes under the name Disney's Doug. Later in 1994, All That came along. All That was a sketch comedy show that ran on Nick for quite a while. This is also the closest Nick ever got to making their own Saturday Night Live. Nickelodeon's parent company Viacom also bought Paramount Pictures around this time. This may not sound interesting now, but it will be in a few years. Then one day, Nick basically said, "Oh shoot, we almost forgot Nick Jr. existed!" So, they completely retooled it by giving it 2 new original shows, as well as a new mascot named Face. On top of that, Nick started including Nick Jr. shows in their VHS lineup. In 1995, Nick went online with its own website. You know it today as Nick.com. Although it was only accessible via America Online, it did get its own website later. Also in 1995, Nick launched a block called Nick in the Afternoon, which only aired in the summer. The block was hosted by a popsicle stick named Stick Stickly. Stick was voiced by Paul Christie, who also voices another Nick mascot, but we'll get to him in a bit. Paul's other character might surprise you, as it is one a lot of young 2000s kids might remember. Meanwhile, in Canada, Nelvana made an animated adaptation of the Little Bear books by Maurice Sendak, but then Nick Jr. saw it and took it. In 1996, Nickelodeon premiered a bunch of new shows, including Hey Arnold, Kenan and Kel, Blue's Clues, Space Cases, and The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo. This was also when Nick cut ties with Sony Wonder, and their tapes were now distributed by Paramount. But the most important Nick event in this year was the first ever Nickelodeon movie, Harriet the Spy. However, longtime Nick president Geraldine Laybourne stepped down after 12 years, and Herb Scannell took her place. Scannell actually had his own section of Nickelodeon magazine called Hey Herb, where you can interview him. This replaced Laybourne's version of the section called Ask the Boss Lady. In 1997, 1 year after the debut of Harriet the Spy, Nickelodeon already released its second movie, Good Burger, which was based on the All That skit of the same name. starring comedy duo Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell, of course. In 1998, Rugrats became the first ever Nicktoon to be adapted into a movie. I'm personally confused on why this didn't come out sooner due to Rugrats' popularity, but whatever works, I guess. 1998 also saw the debut of Nickelodeon, an hour-long block that aired from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And its schedule was diverse! Like, really, really diverse. Oh, see that show right there? Oh Yeah Cartoons was created to showcase pilots for potential future Nicktoons. In fact, these 3 Nicktoons got their start on this show. 1999 was a pretty big year for Nickelodeon because 4 major things happened. First, the channel turned 20 years old. Second, they collaborated with CTW, the company that owns Sesame Street, and they created an all-educational channel called Noggin. Third, they created another separate channel for all their game shows. This channel was called Nickelodeon Games and Sports, or Nick Gas if you don't have that much time. And finally, Nick premiered a show that would change the network forever. Can you guess what it is? Yup, it's SpongeBob. This is hands down the most popular Nickelodeon show, and is still going strong even after 24 years. So best believe we're going to be seeing a lot of SpongeBob from this point on. We now leave the 90s. Welcome to the 2000s, where the year 2000 kicks off with Nickelodeon, an event that McDonald's sponsored to sort of kick off the new era of time, the turn of the century. SpongeBob had just entered its 2nd season, and the show was starting to insanely grow in popularity. And the Nick Jr. block just debuted a new show that would basically be its equivalent of SpongeBob. Apparently, Nick didn't think one channel was good enough, so they launched Nick 2! Nick 2's schedule was significantly different, so expect Nick Jr. at 6 a.m. rather than 9 a.m., which is kind of silly because who'd want to watch Blue's Clues at 6 in the morning? In addition to Nick 2, we also got Nick on CBS. Nick on CBS was to give non-cable kids a taste of what Nick had to offer. We now enter 2001. A lot happened in 2001. 2 towers were destroyed, tragically ending the lives of many. George W. Bush became president, and I was born. But that doesn't mean Nick didn't have any events of their own. For instance, on March 30th, 2 new Nicktoons premiered, Invader Zim and The Fairly Odd Parents. On December 21st, 2001, a movie called Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius debuted. It was revolutionary, as Nick property had never been in CGI before. Snick also got a Sunday night counterpart in the form of T-Nick. By the time 2002 rolled around, Nickelodeon had already aired 16 different Nicktoons, 17 if you count Pelswick, meaning they had enough shows for them to be their own separate channel. Enter Nicktoons TV. Nicktoons TV was made to air Nick's animated content 24/7. And to go with it, Nickelodeon turned their movie, Jimmy Neutron, into a TV series on July 20th. So now, Nick had 4 different channels. In 2002, CTW, which has been since renamed to Sesame Workshop, sold its half of Noggin to Nickelodeon, leaving Noggin 100% under Viacom's ownership. And speaking of Noggin, it started sharing a channel with The N, which is a team block that airs at night. And then on April 7th, 2003, Noggin basically became a clone of Nick Jr. Also on this day, Noggin introduced 2 new mascots, Moose and Z. Z was completely mute, but Moose was voiced by Paul Christie, the same guy who did Stick Stickly. Isn't that neat? On April 11th, 2003, Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast first opened. It was like a show ride event that featured many Nicktoon characters. And they say Infinity War is the most ambitious crossover. In November 2003, SpongeBob released a game called Battle for Bikini Bottom. The game would eventually be remastered years later. 2004 saw the premieres of many new shows, such as Drake and Josh, Danny Phantom, and The Backyardigans. However, in exchange for some decent new premieres, a lot of shows got the axe, such as these. Also, Nick Studios in Orlando got repainted to a more green, white, orange 2000s look. because this started to look pretty dated. And it was around this time that SpongeBob SquarePants truly became Nick's big hit show, because SpongeBob received a balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and he also made his big screen debut. One more thing in 2004, Nickelodeon launched the Worldwide Day of Play, where Nick went off the air for a while so that their viewers could get outside and have fun. But let's be real, nobody actually went outside. Most of us just changed the channel to Cartoon Network or something, so Worldwide Day of Play was kind of pointless. In 2005, Avatar: The Last Airbender first aired. Why I mention it on its own personal slide is because the show suddenly became popular a whole 12 years after it ended. And it's all thanks to Netflix. But the other Nicktoons that premiered in 2005 are so obscure that no one talks about them. Sadly, on April 30th, 2005, Nick Studios was shut down. And Snick was shut down too. On September 23rd, 2005, Nicktoons renamed itself to Nicktoons Network. And on December 31st, 2005, we sadly lost Nick on CBS. It got replaced with KOL Secret Slumber Party, a block on CBS that aired a lot of girly content. On January 4th, 2006, Herb Scannell left Nickelodeon, and in his place came Sima Zargami. By now, Nickelodeon was a completely different channel than it was in the last decade. I mean, just take a look at all this! This doesn't scream 90s at all. It screams more 2008. This is also when SpongeBob really became not only Nick's most popular show, but obviously their favorite. SpongeBob marathons were happening more frequently, it was the only 90s show that didn't end yet, and it was still making new episodes after 10 whole years. Sadly, this is where Nickelodeon began its slow decline. As I just mentioned, Nick started airing mostly SpongeBob, and just stopped caring about its other shows, since a lot of other Nicktoons were ending around this time, and all the newer shows that were premiering around this time began to feel more lifeless. Some of them were just plain horrible. In fact, this also applied to Nick Jr. as well. Even though Nick was rotting around this time, a lot of wild stuff did happen. iCarly, one of the most notable live-action Nick shows, debuted. The End became its own separate channel from Noggin, replacing Nick Gas. Little Bill finally started airing on Noggin, and this book came out. This book here contains behind-the-scenes stuff for every Nicktoon up to the Mighty B. In 2008, Nickelodeon allowed Amazon.com to sell DVDs of their shows and movies. So now, online shopping for Nickelodeon's content was a possibility. Nick also made a deal with DreamWorks Animation to produce shows based on their movies. And the first show of that type was The Penguins of Madagascar. Also in 2008, Nick probably made the biggest mistake of its life. A show was pitched to it, and this show could have been a total game changer for the channel. That's right, my friends. Cartoon Network's hit show, Adventure Time, was supposed to be a Nicktoon. However, Nick was given a choice to air either one of these two shows. One of these shows has an in-depth plot and wholesome characters and episodes, while the other is literally nothing but gross humor, shouting, and immature writing from monkeys with a typewriter. However, Nick were total geniuses and went with this monstrosity. Talk about a tough life. So, Adventure Time went to air on Cartoon Network instead. And yeah, that was a smart move on Nick's part. But then, on September 28th, 2009, everything changed. For the first time in 25 years, Nickelodeon and its whole family changed their logos. If you ask me, these logos look more generic and samey than the older ones. In December 2009, Nick Magazine published its last regular issue. However, it would briefly return in 2015 to 2016. It is now the 2010s. It was here that the popularity of Nickelodeon sitcoms was at an all-time high. They were flooding the channel, leaving SpongeBob and Fairly OddParents as the only regularly aired Nicktoons. On July 1st, 2010, Avatar: The Last Airbender became the first Nicktoon to be made into a live-action movie, but it wasn't very good. And then, the Fairly OddParents decided to do the same thing in 2011, which came at a relevant time, considering the show was turning 10. And now Teen Nick has a new primetime block dedicated to nostalgia named after all that. Sadly, however, Jimmy Neutron Infinity War closed down after 8 years. Probably because Jimmy Neutron stopped airing long before this occurrence. During this time, Nickelodeon started airing shows of already existing pieces of media. And this time, pieces of media that didn't belong to DreamWorks. On February 29th, 2012, Moose and Z were retired from Nick Jr. after 9 years. And in October, Nick Jr. went back to having a nighttime block in the form of Nick Mom. It was also around this time that Nick's shows were unwatchable. For instance, they started airing Fred the Show, making it the first Nick show to be based on YouTube material. This show was so bad that it was cancelled after 1 stupid season. Hey, remember Snick? It didn't actually shut down, it just went unnamed for 7 years. Not anymore though, because now it's called Gotta See Saturdays. I hear it even airs in the morning too, but it doesn't last very long. Bear with me here. About 99% of all Nick shows that premiered after 2013 are garbage, so I won't even bother mentioning most of them anymore. But in October 2014, Viacom launched a new streaming platform called CBS All Access. It may not be popular now, but it will be relevant later on. Also in 2014, the Kids' Choice Awards got a spin-off in the form of Kids' Choice Sports. But unlike KCA, KCS would air at a different point in the year, specifically the fall season. In 2015, however, some pretty interesting things occurred, some good and some bad. Nick clearly wanted its fans to get a taste of that nostalgia juice, so they did a few things to quench their thirst. For instance, Invader Zim returned as a comic book series, and Noggin was brought back, except now it was no longer a cable channel, but rather a streaming service. And finally, Teen Nick changed the 90s Are All That's name to The Splat, which is a nighttime block that airs Nick's older content. And in February 2015, SpongeBob released its second movie, Sponge Out of Water. And on April 6, 2015, this absolute monstrosity of a show premiered. Make It Pop, or as I like to call it, Nick's attempt at making a live-action anime. Thankfully, it's been cancelled after just 16 months, and with luck, Nick will never air it again. But then again, Nick's always hyper-focused on SpongeBob, so yeah. It seems as though Nick really wants some nostalgia juice going, because they nabbed 4 of their old properties back, and decided to make movies out of them. 2 of them aired on the channel itself, while the other 2 went to Netflix in 2019. On August 11th, 2016, Nick Animation celebrated its 25th anniversary, and in 25 years, Nick had produced a total of 42 Nicktoons. Hey, remember the DreamWorks deal? Yeah, well, that's officially no more. And on September 9th, 2016, Nick Music arrived to replace MTV Hits. On March 13th, 2017, a very terrifying thing happened. SpongeBob SquarePants creator, Steven Hillenburg, was diagnosed with ALS, and it was guaranteed to kill him in a year or so. Hillenburg announced that he would continue to work on his show for as long as he could. In July 2017, The Fairly OddParents finally ended after 16 years of granting wishes. In 2018, Double Dare returned, and it was slimier than ever. And longtime show creators Butch Hartman and Dan Schneider left Nick after so many years for both. Also, Sima Zargami left the channel. She was replaced with current Nick president Brian Robbins. And now, onto the saddest event of 2018. On November 26, 2018, Steven Hillenburg's ALS had finally killed him. And every SpongeBob fan, big and small, went into mourning. This officially makes Steven the first Nicktoon creator to pass away. In January 2019, Viacom acquired Pluto TV, a free streaming service. So now Pluto TV had shows of Nickelodeon and Nick Jr. available on it. On March 19th, 2019, the Splat was replaced with Nick Rewind. Nick Rewind continued to broadcast on Teen Nick until January 31st, 2022. Around this time, Nickelodeon officially acquired the comic strip Garfield, still with plans to make a new animated series starring the Garfield cast sometime in the future. Also, Worldwide Day of Play officially stops existing after 15 years, most likely because it took Nick that long to realize that people just aren't going to listen to them about going outside and getting sunburned. We now enter 2020, which was without a doubt the worst year of the 21st century so far. Around this time, the new streaming platform Disney Plus debuted, and in order to compete with Disney's new streaming service, Viacom took CBS All Access, threw nearly every Nick and Nick Jr. show onto it, and changed its name to Paramount Plus on March 4th, 2021. On that same day, a spin-off of SpongeBob called Camp Coral premiered. Paramount Plus is making new revamped versions of other Nick classics, such as a CGI reboot of Rugrats, and a newer, more modern iCarly. In fact, Paramount became so prominent to Viacom that Viacom outright changed its name to Paramount Global in 2022! And Nick's founder, Dr. Vivian Horner, sadly passed away at the age of 88. But there's something pretty sick in 2023. On March 4th, 2023, Nickelodeon aired their 36th annual Kids' Choice Awards, and it came with a neat little surprise. Nickelodeon officially welcomed their iconic orange glob of slime back into their logo. This, along with a new aesthetic for their bumpers, are still being used right now. Well, looks like we made it to the end. Nickelodeon is still going strong after 40 plus years. I hope I mentioned enough for this to be an improvement. The end. Dun, 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 dun.